The basketball world erupted in disbelief when the Indiana Fever pulled off a seismic upset against the Las Vegas Aces, silencing critics and defying every prediction. On a night meant to celebrate Aliyah Wilson's crowning as MVP, the underdog Fever turned the script upside down, dismantling the defending champions on their own court. This wasn't just a win. It was an earthquake that rattled the very foundation of the WNBA. How could a team missing 6 of its most important players storm into enemy territory and walk out with an 89-73 victory? The answer is both shocking and undeniable. From the very beginning, the Fever were treated like nothing more than sacrificial lambs. ESPN panels laughed at the idea of Indiana being competitive. Odds makers set point spreads so wide it felt more like an exhibition game than a semifinal clash. Even Aces fans were smug, certain this series would be a quick sweep. Nobody, and I mean nobody, believed Indiana had a prayer. The narrative was pre-written. Aces dominate, Wilson shines, and the Fever quietly fade into irrelevance. But sports have a cruel, beautiful way of humiliating certainty, and that's exactly what happened. The story only gets more improbable when you remember the staggering injury list Indiana carried into the series. Caitlin Clark sidelined, Sophie Cunningham unavailable, Sydney Colson, Chloe BBY, Ari McDonald, Damaris Dantas, all missing. That's 6 key contributors erased from the rotation. The Fever didn't look like a playoff team. They looked like a patchwork crew barely surviving. Analysts described them as a hospital ward pretending to be a roster. Yet somehow, this broken team, counted out before tip-off, found a way to unleash one of the most shocking performances in WNBA playoff history. Against all odds, they stood tall. The credit begins with head coach Stephanie White. With just a 9-woman rotation, including players who barely touched the court during the regular season, she orchestrated one of the most masterful game plans of her career. She knew Indiana couldn't outmatch Las Vegas with star power alone, so she instilled a culture of resilience, grit, and suffocating defense. White's genius was not in pretending her team was whole, but in maximizing every single piece she had left. It wasn't just coaching, it was survival strategy at its finest. And it gave her team belief when no one else would. That belief crystallized in the unlikeliest of heroes. While the spotlight glared on Aliyah Wilson receiving her MVP trophy, Kelsey Mitchell stepped into the shadows and lit them ablaze. On a night meant to belong to Wilson, Mitchell hijacked the story and made it her own. Every possession she touched became a dagger to Vegas's pride. She was relentless, fearless, and downright unstoppable. Her performance didn't just shift the game, it shifted the entire narrative of the playoffs. What was supposed to be a coronation for one player became the resurrection of another's career, forged in fire. Mitchell's 34-point explosion was more than just numbers on a stat sheet. It was poetry written in defiance. She scored everywhere and against everyone. Mid-range pull-ups with defenders smothering her. Buckets. Deep threes with seconds on the shot clock. Cash. Attacking the rim against Vegas's physicality. Conversions. And to cap it off, she was flawless at the free throw line, hitting all 6 attempts with ice in her veins. It was the kind of performance you don't just remember for a season. You remember it for a generation. Kelsey Mitchell etched her name into history books, whether Vegas wanted it or not. What makes Mitchell's eruption even more powerful is the pain that fueled it. After the game, she admitted she carried a list, a literal list, of every coach, every journalist, every critic who had written her off. Every slight, every dismissal, every time someone said she wasn't good enough. For years, she was treated like an afterthought in her own league, buried under the names of flashier stars. But on this night, she struck back with fury. Her list wasn't just ink on paper, it was fire in her heart, and she burned down the Aces with it. Even Caitlin Clark, sidelined by injury, couldn't help but marvel at Mitchell's brilliance. Clark simply posted 2 words on social media: Kelsey, unreal. No grand speeches, no elaboration, just raw admiration from one phenom to another. It was the ultimate recognition. For a player like Clark, already the face of the Fever's future, to bow her head in respect said everything. Mitchell wasn't just filling in while stars were out. She wasn't borrowing the spotlight. She was owning it. Her teammates knew it, her opponents felt it, and the entire league had no choice but to acknowledge it. But the Fever's triumph didn't rest on Mitchell alone. Their identity came alive on the defensive end, and it began with rookie phenom Aliyah Boston, tasked with the impossible assignment of guarding Aliyah Wilson. Fresh off her MVP honor, Boston played with fearless precision. She didn't try to outscore Wilson. She tried to disrupt her. Every catch was contested. Every drive was pushed off balance. Every shot came with a hand in her face. Wilson still logged 16 points and 13 rebounds, but they were labored, grinding, uncomfortable. Boston's mission wasn't to erase Wilson. It was to humanize her. That subtle disruption had a massive ripple effect. The Aces thrive when Wilson dictates the flow, forcing double teams and creating open looks for her teammates. But Boston's constant pressure slowed the Aces' rhythm to a crawl. Instead of commanding the game, Wilson was forced into deep shot clocks and awkward resets. The Aces' offense looked disjointed, hesitant, and frustrated. In that frustration, Indiana found strength. Boston may not have won the statistical battle, but she won the psychological war. She reminded everyone that even the league's brightest stars can bleed when met with fearless defense. And the fever bled Vegas dry. Yet Boston wasn't the only fever soldier laying her body on the line. Lexie Hull played with the kind of defensive ferocity you simply can't measure in numbers. She shadowed Jackie Young all night, fighting through screens, sticking her like glue, and refusing to bite on any fake. Young, usually a consistent scoring threat, looked invisible under Hull's relentless pressure. But Hull didn't stop there. When Indiana desperately needed points, she calmly sank threes that shattered Vegas's momentum. Her role was clear: suffocate one of the Aces' stars, then deliver daggers of her own. She executed it perfectly. Odyssey Sims brought fire to the floor like a spark plug. From the moment she checked in, she attacked the basket with reckless abandon. She split defenders, forced fouls, and drove the pace faster than Vegas could handle. Suddenly, the Aces were reacting instead of controlling. Sims's fearless aggression turned the game into chaos, and in chaos, the fever thrived. She embodied the very thing Indiana was supposed to lack: confidence. Every drive screamed defiance. Every foul drawn shouted rebellion. Sims didn't just attack the rim. She attacked the arrogance of champion, and it shook Las Vegas to its core. Then there was Natasha Howard, the quiet force anchoring the middle, while others grabbed the headlines. Howard delivered a double-double that gave Indiana the foundation it needed. She boxed out relentlessly, securing second-chance opportunities that drained the Aces' energy. She battled for rebounds, clogged passing lanes, and imposed her physicality in the paint. Alongside her stood Brianna Turner, whose defensive length turned the rim into a fortress. Together, they flipped the narrative. Everyone expected Vegas to dominate inside, but Indiana outscored them 50-38 in the paint. That stat alone symbolized the night. What was supposed to be Vegas' strength became Indiana's hammer. When the final buzzer sounded, Becky Hammond had no choice but to admit the truth. "We had no answer for Mitchell," she said bluntly. The Aces head coach, never one to hand out free compliments, confessed what the entire arena already knew. Indiana had outplayed them in every meaningful category. This wasn't luck. This wasn't fluke. It was execution, urgency, and relentless willpower. Indiana didn't just stumble into victory. They engineered it, and Hammond's concession was proof. The defending champions had been exposed, and their air of invincibility evaporated under the relentless pressure of the fever's fire. But one victory doesn't end a series. It sparks a war. The history books show that nearly 30% of teams who lose Game 1 in a best-of-5 come back to win the series. The Aces know this. Their fans know this. And Indiana knows this. Game 1 was a statement, but Game 2 will be a battlefield. Las Vegas won't show up flat again. They'll be furious, hungry, and desperate to restore their dominance. Aya Wilson will come hunting for redemption, and Jackie Young will be determined to break free of Hull's defensive chains. The counterattack is already loading. That looming storm is what makes Indiana's position both thrilling and terrifying. Winning as an underdog, when nobody expects you to, is one thing. But winning again, when your opponent throws everything at you, is a completely different challenge. Can Mitchell replicate her shooting masterpiece when the defense brings traps and double teams? Can Boston continue to frustrate Wilson when adjustments are made? Can Sims, Hull, and Howard sustain the same energy with the Aces' adjustments coming? These questions hang like daggers over Game 2, and the answers will determine whether Indiana's miracle is fleeting or destiny. Coach Stephanie White understands this pressure better than anyone. After the game, her message was clear. We've got to keep the main thing the main thing. For her, It wasn't about celebrating too early or basking in the upset. It was about staying grounded, keeping focus, and playing Indiana basketball. She reminded her team that champions respond differently to adversity, and Vegas would come swinging. White's brilliance lies not just in strategy, but in keeping her team centered. One win doesn't crown them, but two would ignite a revolution that even the Aces might not be able to contain. And that's where the Fever's identity comes into sharp focus. We over me, that's the mantra. It doesn't matter who's on the court, who's missing, or who's in the spotlight. This team plays for one another. Every substitution, every defensive stand, every shot taken is rooted in collective empowerment. That culture is their greatest weapon, greater even than Mitchell's scoring or Boston's defense. Because when a team believes in each other, when they fight not for individual glory but for the unit, they become dangerous. That's what Vegas underestimated. That's what the world overlooked. And that's what fuels the Fever now. So here we are, standing on the edge of history. The Fever, a team written off as broken, humiliated, and irrelevant, suddenly hold the power to alter the trajectory of the entire WNBA postseason. One more win, and they transform from fluke upset artists into legitimate contenders. Two more wins, and they punch a ticket to the finals no one believed they'd see. It's bigger than basketball. It's redemption, defiance, and hope rolled into one. The Aces were supposed to write this story. Instead, the Fever snatched a pen and scribbled a warning. Underestimate us at your own peril.